So what's the first thing he says? Your children are not your children. So there's a beautiful little paradox in language here. The language itself is starting to show the attitude that he's trying to convey here. He uses the phrase your children even while he dismisses the notion of, quote unquote, your children. So he borrows the language. He doesn't lose the language. He doesn't get rid of the language. He happily uses it. In the same way, we can keep the language of my children, but he's telling us now to reframe it. We use the phrase my child as a way of pointing to a specific individual and indicating their lineage, their heritage, the family to which they belong, the relationship between that particular child and this particular adult. So we don't drop the language, we drop possessiveness. So when he says your children are not your children, what he's saying is they are not your possessions. The children that you indicate with the word my is only indicating a biological, emotional, social, intellectual relationship. It's not indicating a sense of possession. Keep the language. Keep the love. Keep the duty of care, but drop the sense that I own them. Now, if you ask most parents, do you own your children? The answer, of course, is going to be no, I don't own them. Ask a person, do you own your spouse? And everyone's going to say, no, I don't own my spouse. Despite the fact that we know we don't or we can't own another person, we often act as if we do. How does possessiveness show up in relationships? Control is a really powerful way to understand this. If I own a car, it's mine to do with what I choose. When we as parents exercise control over children, it's often done from this perspective that I am the possessor. It's not done with that objective sense of how does this constitute my obligation right now? I'm going to restrict the child's movement. Why? Because it's my obligation to do it for the child's well-being, or is it coming out of an impulse? Now, would you act in the same way to your nieces and nephews, to your neighbours' children, to the children in the school where you're a teacher? If the answer is no, then what's the difference? Why are you impulsive and unmindful when you deal with your own children? Because there is that familiarity that breeds contempt. There is a sense of attachment and possessiveness. You're my child, I can do what I like. So it's natural. Also, we have to understand this, that the sense of attachment and possessiveness that we have, not just for our children, but for all relationships, is a part of the mind. It's baked into the cake of being human. The mind is like a child in you. The intellect is like an adult. When a child acts in ways that are immature and not in their best interests, we don't say that there's something wrong with the child. We simply recognize that's the nature of the immature personality. That is what it is. Our job is to guide. When we look at our own minds and we see that sense of attachment developing, that sense of possessiveness developing, there is a tendency to heap guilt upon ourselves and say that there's some sort of moral failing, rather than recognizing this is the nature of everybody's mind. My mind is doing what minds do. So in the same way that you look at a child and say that's the way children act, when we sense this attachment and possessiveness coming into our relationships, that's the way the mind is. Of course it will do that. And in fact, if you want to look at it from an evolutionary perspective, it's a powerful way of strengthening and maintaining those family units. If I'm attached to someone, I am going to jump in front of the advancing predator to protect them. So the idea is to look at your own attachment and possessiveness not with a sense of frustration or disgust, not with a rejection of who and what you are, but rather by recognizing this is who I am, but it's not entirely who I am. There are deeper, more subtle levels of my personality that I can grow into that allow me to manage the mind. So we keep everything at the lower levels, but we add things at the higher levels. Just as we keep the language, my child, but we add to it the understanding that you cannot own a person. They come through you, but not from you. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. So what he's talking about here is starting to give us a way to shift away from that attachment and possessiveness. It's all very well and good to say don't be attached and possessive towards your children, but never accept a should without a how. How do you do it? And so this shift in mindset comes from integrating knowledge. And it's not just one piece of knowledge. There's a whole range of insights that we can adopt here. A simple one is that you cannot own another human being, no matter who they are. What do we call the ownership of human beings? Slavery. So if you claim to be the owner or the possessor of your child, then you are the slave owner. So understanding this is the first aspect of trying to shift out of our sense of attachment and possessiveness. You cannot own another person. So that's the knowledge part, the cognitive aspect. We also want to work on the emotional, the affective part of the personality. And he gives a beautiful analogy all through this section. He says they are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. He is giving this poetic image of life longing for itself and somehow bringing forth children so that life may be satisfied in seeing itself being born, in seeing itself grow and die and merge back into itself and continue to regenerate. Consciousness knowing itself in an infinite number of forms. What is life doing? Why is there something instead of nothing? And why are some of the somethings alive and conscious, sentient? What's life doing? It's coming to know itself in all of these different forms. And so when you look at this idea that children are just the movement of nature, creating itself, and that my role in this is to act as a bow, so that nature may fire those arrows through me and into the future, then that's working on the devotional side of the personality. You're seeing yourself as part of something larger, as part of something that your limited intellect cannot really conceive. This is devotion. And any time we are filled with a sense of devotion, that feeling, it's an environment where ego, possessiveness, grasping, pettiness can't sustain itself. If your pH of your soil is too low, then this plant won't grow. If it's too high, then other plants won't grow. When you have the environment of insight and devotion, then the ego just starts to wither. And when the environment changes, then the ego wakes up again and it's strengthened again. And so you bring it back into that same environment. But this is the how. This is the how of drop the attachment and possessiveness, even while you keep the love and the joy and the connection and the duty of care. So we've got knowledge that you can gain as an insight. You have devotion, which is a practice that you can employ. And you also have a self-reflection. Do I claim to be the possessor of my children? Well, if I did claim to be the possessor of my children, how would that possessiveness show itself? Control. Not talking here about the healthy guidance that a parent is obligated to execute. We're talking about control that comes from the ego. I'm afraid my child may tumble and fall, so I'm going to control their movements. I'm afraid my child may take up a different ideological perspective or lifestyle, so I don't want them exposed to that kind of thought over in that part of the internet. I'm controlling their behavior, not because I think it's in their best interests, although that is how I would justify it, but truly what's really going on underneath the surface, my ego is acting out of fear, desire, and control. A way to self-reflect is to ask the question, what is mine in my child? What's my responsibility in the creation of this being? He was talking about life's longing for itself. Think about it from the perspective of nature. What can I, as a parent, truly claim responsibility for in the creation of the child? When it comes to bringing the child into the world, nature puts the sexual urge into your body. You can't put it there, you can't take it away. Nature puts the psychological need for connectedness, for community, into your psyche. You can't dispense with it, and you can't turn it on and off. You've got no control over that. Nature's doing that. The growth and the gestation of the fetus, nature's doing it. Who births the child? Well, the mother does. The mother's body does. Nature knows what she's doing. She will birth the child. Millions and millions of years we've been doing it. Nature has been giving birth to itself for millennia without our help. What's my responsibility? Well, I took care of the child. I fed the child. I clothed it. Could you have chosen not to do that? Now, you might think that the answer to that question is yes, I could have shirked my responsibilities and not done it. But really, could you have? After day one of not fulfilling your responsibilities to the newborn, to the 2-year-old, to the 5-year-old, what would your life have been like? Intolerable, insufferable. Your own nature would have forced you to take care of the child's needs. You're completely constrained. You're a helpless victim to the love, care and duty that you've been showering on your child. Well, I turned them into the beautiful human being that they are today by my great parenting. Could you have acted differently? Where can you really claim responsibility? Where can you really claim a sense of ownership over the child? Now, an important thing to understand about this self-reflection, it is in part to actually give yourself novel answers to questions that you may never have asked. But it's important to put it into the framework of understanding what we are doing with this self-reflection. What we're doing is looking to offset the ego. They come through you, but not from you. They come from life's longing for itself. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you.